They had those for the supplies when they were trying to bomb it.
Okay, one person at a time. Why did we invade Cambodia? Messenger.
To take out the Viet Cong refugees, or not refugees, sanctuaries. Yeah, that's the word.
Sanctuaries. And what would be a Viet Cong sanctuary? What does that mean?
A place where they would retreat to be safe. And
Yeah, so like Viet Cong hiding places, Viet Cong bases. So they were using Cambodia to hide out, and also we know the Ho Chi Minh Trail went through there as well, and that was providing supplies for the Viet Cong in South Vietnam. So Nixon secretly invades Cambodia in order to try to take out and destroy those Viet Cong sanctuaries because he wants to get out of the war as soon as he can, and he thinks, well, if I expand it really quick and take out as much as the Viet Cong that I can, then I can retreat and there's less of a chance that they're going to come back. And there's more of a chance that North Vietnam is going to try to get out of it as well. So he expands the war. Well, this comes out. He doesn't tell anyone for a while. And then it comes out and people are pretty mad, right? Why do you think people were mad and there's more riots and protests after the invasion of Cambodia? Allison.
They thought we were winning more and they thought we were going to pull the troops out.
Yeah, everyone thought, because that's what Nixon promised, peace with honor, a gradual withdrawal, and then people hear, well, now you're expanding it to Cambodia. Who gave you the authority to expand it to Cambodia? Why are we now fighting in another country other than Vietnam? How is this ending the war? So you get a new wave of protests. So you get a lot of protests after the Tet Offensive, and then you get a lot of protests after the invasion of Cambodia. And that's where we get the Kent State Massacre. So we've covered all this, correct? Mm-hmm. All right, so we know that the first thing they did, remember, these were agitators that came on campus that started all this. So it wasn't all started by Kent State students. Anti-war protesters came on campus during exam week, during that last week or so of college when, the students are kind of loose, they're kind of happy, they're kind of hanging out, they're drinking a lot, and they kind of capitalized on that college atmosphere to get them all worked up about the invasion of Cambodia, the Vietnam War, and to start demonstrating and rioting. So the first day, they set the ROTC building on fire because it represents government and military on the college campus. They slash the fire hoses. Also that night, they go into the city of Kent, and a lot of those little businesses down that main road of Kent. How many have been to Kent and knows what I'm talking about? Okay, there's like a theater there, there's a record store. So they kind of do some vandalism, they crash, they break windows, that kind of thing. So this gets everyone worked up. James A. Rhodes, by the way, how do we have a connection with him on this campus? The Jar Arena is named after him. He's the governor of Ohio, sends the National Guard troops to KSU. May 3rd, the next day, they disperse a rally with tear gas. Then May 4th is what we know as the Kent State Massacre, where the students gather, and then you have all the other people watching the actual protest. And the students start throwing rocks at the National Guard members who have their guns out with real bullets loaded in there. They start throwing rocks, they start cussing them out, and then they start marching towards the Ohio National Guard troopers. And that's when all HE double hockey sticks breaks out and they fire into the crowd. 4 students die, 9 are injured. Yes, Jacob?
They were actually ordered to fire because there were about 200 guardsmen. Mm-hmm. And the students not only had rocks, but they had picked up baseball bats, weapons, and whatnot. And so they were ordered to fire into them, and they had no choice.
Though, from my understanding, nobody ever took responsibility for who gave the order. That's still kind of in the chaos of the situation, it kind of happened.
No,
it's a lot like the Boston
Massacre. They did an
Massacre.
investigation, and it was found that one of the commanders said fire. And ordered his men
I
to
think
fire.
but that commander, I think, still denies it to this day that he said that. All right, and here's some pictures. Did we see these yesterday?
Yes.
This is my favorite picture. I think this kind of gives you the context of what happened better than any other picture. So again, the guardsmen. How many have seen this area of Kent State? How many have driven by there or actually maybe walked on here? Because it still is pretty much the same today. So if you ever have a chance, go there and check this out. My understanding is you can still see buildings with bullet holes in it. That's my understanding.
My dad was there May 3rd.
Was he?
He was visiting my grandparents, and May 4th, he heard about it on his way to Fort Dix at about 11 o'clock in the morning. My granddad was a camera sniper there for the sheriff's department.
Interesting. There we go. There's one of the students. I'm not sure if this one actually died or if he was the one injured, one of the 9 injured. Okay, but now we're moving on towards the end of the war. So the Paris peace talks, Nixon pretty much has it with the war, and he's throughout his term trying to end it. So for a year or so before the war actually ends, he sends Henry Kissinger, who is his national security advisor, basically as his representative to Paris to meet with representatives of the North Vietnamese government trying to come to a peace deal. But it took a while because they just couldn't get the North Vietnamese to recognize South Vietnam's independence and to basically agree that they wouldn't attack South Vietnam again and to let South Vietnam be, whatever it wanted to be independent of the North, to not be communist, and to be free. But we finally do get a ceasefire agreement that ends the war in January 1973. So know that 1973 is the year the Vietnam War officially ends. The ceasefire called for all U.S. forces to withdraw immediately. So it was pretty much a major agreement right at the time that we just pretty much walk out and leave Vietnam after this. We withdraw immediately. All POWs were released. Who do we know that was a POW? That's a famous figure that we know about. John McCain. Anyone know any of the things John McCain experienced in Vietnam?
Yeah. Torture. Hell, they put him in a bamboo cage and let the kids poke him, prod him with hot sticks. Mm-hmm. They tied him up on bamboo cross things and whipped them.
Yeah.
Whole bunch of stuff. My dad doesn't really talk about it. But
your dad was a POW?
No, but I believe he knows a couple of his buddies were. I'm not sure though.
All right. And they finally, by 1973, get North Vietnam to agree to allow South Vietnam to determine their own future. So that's not exactly what we wanted. We wanted them to recognize South Vietnamese sovereignty, permanently. But the best that Kissinger and Nixon could get out of the North Vietnamese leaders was that they would allow South Vietnam to determine whether or not they wanted to be part of the North Communists or whether or not they wanted to stay independent and allies with the United States. And for the short term, the 17th parallel will continue to be the dividing line. Now, what war does this remind you of? How another war ended? Anyone know? The Korean War. So pretty much kind of like the Korean War, we fight a number of years to kind of let things go back exactly the way they were before the war. Now, you could say, was that victory? Or were we defeated? Was that our objective and therefore we left, meeting our objective, therefore we won the war? Or would you say we didn't lose the war but we didn't win? How would you assess this end of the Vietnam War?
Military won the battles, politicians lost the war.
Okay, that's a good insight. Any other ideas? Vanessa says we lost. Why do you think we lost? Because what? We didn't get what we wanted? Okay. Well, for the time being here, this is really what we wanted. We wanted South Vietnam not to be communist. But does this whole situation last? No, it doesn't. Here's just some newspapers and the Time magazine from the ceasefire. A major event in 1973. But that doesn't last very long because in 1975, so a little over a year later, North Vietnam, after we had left, we only had a few military advisors in South Vietnam. But a year after we left, North Vietnam goes back on the ceasefire agreement, the Paris peace talks, and they invade South Vietnam. This time we're not there, and we don't come back to help this time. So they launch a massive invasion of South Vietnam. In a few months, South Vietnam pretty much crumbles, just like before. The South Vietnamese army weren't trained and just weren't able to defend the country without the U.S. forces there and without the U.S. support. So South Vietnam crumbles. The president has to flee to Thailand, and on April 30th, 1975, South Vietnam surrenders and ceases to exist. And there was